Hello, class. This is my week 3 attending exercise of the 5 questions that we have to answer. I've broken them down into probably 7 because of the way that I wrote it and had to retype it, but I'm going to share this with you. The first question is, what was the bad news in this passage? And the passage I chose was Luke 4, verses 14 through 30. The bad news in this passage was the way the people treated Jesus. They had heard about Jesus prior, but they were still thrown by his presence, and they were not very welcoming after hearing what he had to say. Even though before he ever came to Nazareth, they were pleased because they heard throughout the country of his teachings. But they still just were very perplexed. Even though before they were pleased of what they heard about Jesus, these people were troubled and very troubled and grew very angry at every word he had to say. My second question is the second question is what is the good news about this passage? The good news about this passage to me was Jesus survived these people. They plotted to throw him off a cliff, and they threw him out of the synagogue and even took him to the edge of the town to try to throw him off the cliff. So the good news to me was Jesus survived these people and his death. But he still tried to tell them beforehand what was going to happen. I truly believe that everything happened because it was supposed to. However, they were so angry they all missed the point. Um, the third question is, what are the humans doing in this passage? The people were in the synagogue, so I'm assuming the synagogue was probably quite crowded because it was in the town of Nazareth, and of course that was Sunday, and everybody heard that prior to Jesus being there, that about what he was preaching about, and they probably were all interested to see, what was going to happen and what he had to say. So the people in the synagogue, they were probably all there looking and listening, and the people um, were wondering. But throughout the time that Jesus was preaching and sharing the scripture, they became very angry. And then the next question is, what is God doing during this passage? I even asked myself, but I believe that God is faithfully and was faithfully leading Jesus' walk in the worst of times. Many times throughout his walk, he was faced with so many people wanting to bring harm to him and hurt him. But nevertheless, people never knew that he was here or there for a reason. And the next question is, how many different places or characters were in this scripture? There were many characters. They Jesus talked about Elijah. He talked about Israel. He talked about many things in the scripture, but it's obvious there were people in the synagogue and the people of Nazareth that attended synagogue each Sunday. The next question is, what intrigues me in this passage or stimulates more questions in my mind? What I found intriguing was the way that Jesus was treated. However, I found it even more interesting that he walked right through the crowd of people without notice. They were so mad and angry and plotting to throw him out of the town and throw him off of a cliff that he was able to walk right through um, without notice. I found it even more interesting. He walked right through the people, and they didn't even know, and he was able to go about and his walk. Since they were so indulged in anger, they missed the whole message of why Jesus was there in the beginning of prophecy, and let alone did not know he was the Messiah they had been waiting on. Even after reading scripture, I would have thought that these people would have been more um, open and more kinder, but they weren't. And my biggest question that comes to mind is I question why God allowed Jesus to suffer so much for his people. That's the biggest question to me. He suffered so much for his people, and they just treated him so bad. But these were my questions, and thanks for listening to my exercise. I hope the video was informative, and I learned a lot from this, and thanks again.